Good evening, cult members, and welcome to Pop Culture Cult. I'm Sean.
I'm Janice.
And welcome to our spoiler reaction review cry session of episode 4 of the Loki series called The Nexus Event.
Right. Which we kind of didn't find out what that was.
No, well... No. Okay, so some disclaimers as we get into this a little bit. We talked about it. We're going to do spoilers. It's hard to have the conversation about the episode without talking about spoilers. So spoilers. I've said spoilers 4 times now. You've been warned. 2, I'm going to get a little cursy, just so you know. And 3, we are, like we've said in the past, we are coming from the point of view of the MCU and the show itself. We don't have any back knowledge of the comic, so we may have wild speculation because of what we've learned in the MCU as it's been told to us so far and what the show has told us so far. But I'm sure there's something in the background of the comic that'll give away everything, whatever. But that's where we're at.
Not based on Marvel's previous
Not
history.
based on what it's. We can talk about the whole WandaVision thing for a minute too. So, which I actually want to talk about the WandaVision and thing that's going on right now because I think it connects to this. What's going on? So we're gonna start off with, Marvel, you fuckers. I knew at some point in time the agents at the TVA were going to have to start to wake up.
Yeah.
Or learn on their own, or figure stuff out, or stumble across something. It was going to happen.
Right. Once we found out that they weren't who they thought they were.
Right. Sylvia gave us in the last... Sylvie and the last one told Loki that everybody that works for the TVA is a variant.
Right.
And so once we knew that was going to happen, we kind of put 2 and 2 and 2 and 6 together and get 45 because math. But the idea that it was going to start to creep in. But the big thing that happened with laying it all out this episode was we had multiple agents in the TVA figure it out on their own. You had Hunter 27. Hold on, they changed. IMDb changed their poo. Oh my god.
Go to the... No. Go right there. Right there.
There we go. IMDb changed their stuff and I can't figure out anything. Hunter B15 was under Sylvie's control, and she was having moments while the 2 Loki variants were at the TVA where she was like, I remember things, but I don't understand.
Right. And I started to kind of think about that. Like right when the episode started, I was like, I wonder if when she occupied their bodies in the...
At the Rex cart?
That if she wasn't showing them things, to keep their minds occupied so she could occupy their body or whatever.
Right.
And then that apparently is exactly what happened because she showed her.
They kind of laid that out with Sylvie and Hunter C20, where they were having margaritas together as friends and stuff like that.
Right, but you kind of got the impression that she was doing that to get her to give her information, right? It was more like an interrogation. Not necessarily a body occupation.
Yeah. And that came across more as an illusion than it was a memory.
Yeah.
And then they came out and were straight out said it was a memory.
It was a memory, yeah.
And later on, and especially in this episode, the Loki variants were on Lamentus, and I like that they picked up the episode from the previously on WandaVision, previously on Loki, they showed the final scene where the asteroid goes through the rocket,
right,
and them just like kind of being stuck there, and
right.
then they kind of pick up from there, and the 2 Lokis.
Well, no, first they start with Sylvie as a little girl.
Oh yes,
being kidnapped and taken in front of the TVA or to be tried, and then she breaks free. So now a little bit of kind of why she's so angry.
why she's so angry at the TVA, but
Right.
also when the episode starts and they're coming from the backside of the mountain up into the backside of Asgard,
Yeah.
we haven't really seen that angle.
Yeah.
And so when they kind of, you just see a pillar or a flagpole or whatever,
Yeah.
and as they come up over the mountain, you're like, oh, that's
Yeah.
we're going there. And then they showed Sylvie as a brunette, by the way.
Yeah.
At some point in time, they have to have the conversation where she goes from brunette to blonde and short hair or whatever. But they actually, her being smart enough as a child, she's like 7 or 8 when she gets taken to figure out to grab the card and was able to turn it on and leave. That just shows how smart she is on her own, and how she was able later on to figure out how to do the mind meld thing, whatever they're calling it. But they picked up the main storyline with the 2 Lokis on Lamentis, and they are just like commiserating, like they're like, we've done everything we could,
We're gonna die now,
and they kind of just bond,
right.
And I think Loki Prime, who we're calling Tom Hiddleston Loki Prime here, he maybe finally is allowed himself to not be so narcissistic about himself that he could open himself up to somebody else that wasn't his mother.
But it's still himself.
Right.
So
in that conversation, he falls for a version of himself.
Right.
If this is not allegory for self-love and loving yourself and all versions,
get him some Sigmund Freud,
right?
Because he's in love with a version of himself and his mother,
and his yes. I can't get away from the idea of the agents picking it up on their own. Because we have Hunter B-15, who, because she was enchanted, figured it out. But then Mobius, when the TVA shows up, there's a Nexus event going on in Lamentis, and they open the door, let the 2 Lokis in, and the Lokis jump through to save their asses.
Right.
And so now they're
into the TVA,
and now they're in the TVA, under guard and with the time loopy neck collar thingies, whatever, the shot collar things. And Mobius wants to have a conversation with Sylvie, but Ravonda won't allow him to do it because she has a personal vindication. She has a personal thing with what Sylvie, because she was the one who let Sylvie get away.
Right.
And so she wouldn't allow Mobius to go do that. So Mobius goes and puts Loki Prime in a time loop, and in that time loop we get Lady Sif, which was a really nice kind of. A lot of people have been asking for her to come back. She wasn't in Ragnarok, because she had a TV show, so it was kind of hard for her to come to break away from this. And Loki's in a time loop, and before he goes in the time loop, he tells Mobius, every agent is a variant.
Right. No, he just tells him the TVA is lying.
TVA is lying, right? And that kind of plants the seed in Mobius's head.
Yeah, I really feel like Mobius has had the seed, because there have been conversations between him and Loki and even him and what was her name? Ravonna, is that the head?
The head, yeah.
Where he's just like a little questioning, you can tell that he deep down inside doesn't quite think things add up. And so then when Loki says that to him, now he's like, it kind of brings that idea to the front.
They laid this groundwork for this in the very first episode when Mobius goes to her office.
Yeah.
And there's a new trophy in there.
Yeah.
And a new pin that says Franklin Junior High, Franklin High School, whatever on it. And he doesn't remember like those things happening,
Right.
and it also like maybe sparks something in his head, like, well, what, this is from something. And he always talks about the Sea-Doo,
The jet ski.
the jet skis and stuff
Yeah,
like that.
like,
So
I don't know why I'm attracted to him or whatever. And yeah, so it kind of feels like he already had that questioning planted in there somewhere.
Yeah.
And then Loki said that, but then he kind of brushed it off, and then when he pulled him back out, and they started kind of going back and forth, and Loki said that you're all variants, and I think then he started putting 2 and 2 and 4 and everything together, and was like, huh, this makes more sense.
in that time loop that Loki was in, where Lady Sif was kicking him in the balls and smacking him for cutting her hair
and over
again, he finally admits, like, he did all this stuff because he wanted attention, because he felt alone.
Yeah.
And he doesn't want to be alone. And she kept saying to him, "You're always going to be alone. You're always going to be alone in that thing." And so when he comes out, when Mobius pulls him out, they talk about that. They talk about the conversation about being alone, and Loki kind of tries to lie for Sylvie, and it doesn't really work out, and we get the scene where Mobius tells Loki that they've killed Sylvie.
Yeah.
And you could just see it in Tom's face of the conversation about, like, he obviously cares and cares for her, and Mobius picks up on it.
Yeah.
And with that kind of conversation going on with Loki's realization about stuff, he actually comes out and tells Mobius everything. And Mobius doesn't want to believe it because he's so trained, and everything that comes out of Loki's mouth has to be questioned.
Right.
And so, like, earlier on, when they were on Lamentus, and I thought about the episode previously where they had the timekeeper cell phone Opie-Dory thing, whatever.
Opie-Dory thing.
And he showed it was broken. A lot of people said it was an illusion that he was putting in Sylvie's head.
Right.
And it wasn't. He's actually trying to be a good person.
Yeah, which I think is kind of a theme throughout this whole show. And, to a greater extent, him in the last couple of movies, where he had this same arc, only much longer, instead of that. He really is, he's not all bad.
No.
But it's kind of that, the boy who cried wolf, and you do it enough times and people just don't believe you anymore. But he really does want friends, and he does want people to like him and
care for him
and care about him and stuff. But he's done this stuff for so long that nobody believes him anymore. So, yeah.
They have a really cool scene with Sylvie and Hunter B-15 where they have that whole exchange, and she is shown, B-15 is shown the truth.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting that they didn't show the audience what she saw.
Yeah. I really thought that they would do some, like, flashes of her with her family or hanging out with kids or whatever.
Yeah.
And I liked it. I don't mind the way they did it. Like, I really thought that they were going to do some flashes and allow us to actually see what she was seeing.
Right.
But I think acting wise, I think it was cooler to watch her reaction.
Yeah, and
in the rain,
yes, to see her reaction, and then it's her memories. They're private, right? So you don't all get to
pry in on her.
Yeah.
And I thought that was kind of an interesting. It's a cheaper decision because they don't have to go film anything or whatever. But it's also a really cool artistic decision or whatever.
Yeah.
While they're all Sylvie and B-15 are having their come to Jesus moment, Mobius and Ravonna have this celebratory, we've solved the case and everything that's going on, and she tells Mobius that the timekeepers want him at the erasing, nubbing, I think is what they call it, or something like that. And so
pruning,
that's what it was. The pruning of the sacred timeline. And I'm like, they're gonna prune him there too because he's starting to question stuff. And he does a sleight of hand thing where he convinces her to go put Sylvie's sword on the shelf as a trophy, and he switches out their little tiny keepy flip phone
Opie-dory thingy.
Opie-dory thingy. And he takes that and figures out that Ravana was the one who ordered the pruning of C20, Hunter C20, who was under the Sylvie's thing and was telling everybody I was a real person and everything, and these were real memories.
Yep. And she was not crazy in the way that that she had said she was when she died or was pruned or whatever.
And so I thought it was back to the conversation we're having about the seeds were planted. Seeds were there. They were planted by Loki. He actually started to do some research. He stumbled on what he needed to know, and then he goes and tries to ask Loki if he's really trying to be a good person.
Yeah.
And in the time loop, and he actually stops and tells Loki, "You're actually doing a good thing. You actually want to be a good person. I don't know if anybody's ever told you that."
Yeah.
And Loki's smile was just like, I'm like, I don't know at this point in time if this Loki's ever heard that.
Yeah. Yeah.
He hears it from Thor and Ragnarok and and other stuff, but I don't think this particular Loki has ever heard that.
Maybe from his mom.
Yeah. But it was kind of a friends patting the other friend on the back kind of thing. So they come back into Morbius's office, and this is going to be a fuck you Marvel moment. They come back, and Ravana and guards are standing in Mobius's office, and Mobius tries to kind of play it off as like, oh, we switched things and whatever.
Oh, I realized later.
Yeah, and he has a moment of,
this isn't working.
We're fucked.
Yeah.
And a callback to a previous conversation when they were having the closing of the file kind of conversation. She asked him if he could go anywhere, where would he want to go?
Right.
And he's like, I can go anywhere I want and do anything I want because I'm an agent at the TVA. And so in this spot, he decides to stand up for Loki, and he says, I would like to go back to wherever it was in the timeline that I actually came from and ride my Sea-Doos and whatever.
Maybe I had a jet ski.
And maybe I had a jet ski.
Or he was a jet ski dealer.
And then they prune him in front of Loki. And this is one of those few times where I wish we were actually doing live reactions, because I just blurted out, "You fuckers."
I was like, what? You can't kill Owen Wilson.
Right. He's been one of my favorite characters, partly because it's Owen Wilson, but partly because he's just been fun as a character.
Yeah.
And his gumshoe...
His Owen Wilson-ness.
But also playing the gumshoe noir detective in time kind of thing, and I really loved it, really appreciated it. And then you go and kill him, or did they? A bunch of stuff happens. It doesn't matter. What happens is the two Lokis and Ravana go down to see the Timekeepers, and the Timekeepers themselves pretty much, say we're going to prune you because you need to be pruned,
right?
Whatever. And Loki Prime says, "I've been killed so many times I don't remember, so do your worst." And Sylvie keeps trying to advance towards them, because the whole reason, everything her whole existence is to be in this room with them,
to get them,
get them.
Yep.
And Ravana keeps pulling her back with the shot collar thing, and then the shot collar thing doesn't work, and C-15 or B-15 shows up, the real version, and she unlocks their collars and let mayhem begin.
Yep.
And there's just an awesome fight between Loki and Sylvie and the four guards, and then Sylvie knocks out a couple of the guards and gives a sword to Loki, and then Ravana gets in, and Ravana and Sylvie have a conversation fight about... actually, in the elevator, Sylvie asks Ravana, like, why was I pulled out of my timeline?
Right.
And she's like,
what
I
was
don't
my
remember.
Nexus event?
Yeah, and why was I pulled out? And I don't remember.
Which, so her Nexus event has to be something big.
Big, yeah. 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 It's or not. I mean, if
Or
it,
there wasn't one and she just was being a biatch. And
I think she was being a biatch. That's where I'm at right now. We'll talk about ideas and whatever. But the fight ends. Sylvie knocks out Ravana. Loki takes out the last two guards. I don't know what happened to Hunter B-15. I don't know if she got trimmed, nubbed, whatever it is.
I think she just got knocked out.
I think she got knocked out. Yeah, I don't remember her falling off. Anyways, the timekeepers are kind of like trying to negotiate their way out, and Sylvie throws the sword and beheads the center one, which is the one that everybody's been saying is Kang the Conqueror.
Right.
And it's like, okay, you're not gonna do that. You're not gonna take off the head of the main villains. We're finding out the main villains of the whole thing.
Right.
Taking the head off, and the head rolls down, and the other two start kind of Chuck E. Cheese in the place, whatever. And where the movement's like, I kind of look like I'm doing a thing, but I'm not really sure. And Sylvie goes over and picks up the head, and it's an animatronic android thing. So the timekeepers themselves are not real.
Right.
Fucking Marvel.
So
Okay.
now, who is running the animatronics?
Who created the TVA?
Right. And the timekeepers. The Time Lords.
They're timekeepers.
Keepers.
Timekeepers of the sacred timeline. But everything they've done is to lead up to this point to get them in that room to introduce the timekeepers, who we figured out are the real big bads. It's not Sylvie.
Right.
And
But they're not the real big bad.
And they're not the real big bad either.
Right.
So who is the bad guy in this thing? And
Right.
Sylvie just starts to, like, everything is led up to this point of getting
Right.
them in this room.
Now what?
and now what am I going to do? And Loki kind of, like, collects himself for a minute, and he goes over and he starts talking to her about, like, we will figure this out. And she's like, don't give me a pep talk. I don't need a pep talk right now. And he's like, I'm not giving you a pep talk. We're going to figure this out. And but I need to tell you something. When we were on Lamentus, this is really awkward for me. I don't know how to, because he has never loved anybody or never cared for anybody outside of his mom. And so he grabs her by both shoulders. And I'm really glad they didn't do it. I was expecting a kiss.
I was expecting a kiss.
And I'm really glad they didn't do it. Because Sylvie is in no spot to accept any kind of advance there. But her hearing from him that he cares for her is something that she does need to hear. Except Ravana, the fucking bitch she is, prunes Loki in front of her.
Right.
Fucking Marvel. You've killed off two of your...
The two main characters.
The two of the four main characters of the show, and it's episode 4. Fucking Marvel. And so it's like, okay, and they have a thing or whatever, and Sylvie gets on top, is obviously in a position to take out Ravana, and Ravana says, kill me, and Sylvie's like, no.
Yeah.
And that's the end of the episode. All right, thanks for coming along. Nothing else happened the rest of the time. You sons of bitches. I had heard that there was a post-credit scene in this episode.
Mid-credit scene.
Mid-credit scene, post-credit scene. It's
mid-credit.
mid-credit scene. And Loki wakes up somewhere. And I love his first reaction was, is this hell?
Is this hell? Because that's where I'm going.
No, it's Iowa. I think he was in hell with Lady Sif telling him that he was never going to be anything, or always be alone. But he hears a voice and it says, "Well,"
he says, "Is this hell? Am I dead?"
Am I dead?
And the
then
voice says, "Not yet, but you will be
if you want to come with us.
You need to come with us, or whatever." Yeah.
Come with me if you want to live. And they pan around, and it's other Loki variants.
Right.
And one of them is classic Loki,
right,
which is Richard E. Grant. We get young kid Loki, who is Jack Vale. We get
Boastful.
Boastful,
Yep,
which is
Loki.
a name I'm not even going to try.
D- Diobia.
Diobia or Pal?
Opre.
Or Pay? Okay.
We've butchered the name.
We're sorry.
Sorry.
But they are variants that showed up in the hologram in episode 2. I think some of them were the ones in episode 2, but they're also ones from the comic. Like I know
Right.
that we're
There
getting
are other versions of
other
Loki. Yeah.
versions. Richard E. Grant as classic Loki
Yes.
is just straight out balls to the wall, amazing.
I love how the somebody said it was a kimono dragon. Sure, the giant lizard or baby crocodile had Loki horns on.
Horns, yes.
Is he a variant, or did the kid just put Loki horns on his pet? I'm not sure.
I do actually want to see somebody cosplay that now. Be the
The
kid
kid.
and with carrying around with the it's there's a cosplay thing I want to do right now, and it has nothing to do with this. But they were at New York post devastation of Avengers, the Avengers movie, and it's the variation of the Avengers losing and Loki winning.
Yeah.
because you can see the Avenger Tower in the background.
Right.
So it's either that or it's no, it would not, because the Avenger Tower doesn't exist yet. It would be post Ultron.
Well, the Avenger Tower does, but the A isn't on it.
Right,
Because
the tower
Tony, the beginning of that movie, Tony is
they're
swimming around under the
doing
water
the Stark,
and hooking
the Stark
up the
Tower, yeah, and then it turns
yeah.
into the Avenger
The
Tower,
Avenger
yeah.
Tower.
So,
Yeah, so the
it
tower's
could
there.
be post Avengers.
Yeah.
I was just trying to figure out some way of throwing Ultron in there because we love the Age of Ultron movie. But it lays
Don't add us.
Don't, you can at me all you want. It's a good movie. They've been saying that 4 and 5 are the episodes where everything just kind of goes crazy, and guess what? Everything's gone crazy.
Right.
One of the things that I did want to talk about was the WandaVision thing and how I think it ties into this. When Sylvie sends out the time bombs in episode 2, all the timelines, all the branches of the timeline start going crazy.
Right.
And it came out this week that, without any knowledge or fanfare or whatever, that the post-credit scene in WandaVision where she's out of the cabin, there's been something added. And there's a shadow that actually is in the scene. Somebody actually pointed out, if you put your finger on the shadow, the screen moves, but the shadow itself doesn't move. So it looks like the shadow's moving, but it's not. That's not what's actually happening. It stays on the screen, and then everything behind it moves. And I've had a theory that a lot of people are saying it's Doctor Strange. It could be Doctor Strange, whatever. But it seems very convenient that after the time bomb goes off and starts all these branches, that this kind of shows up. So it'd be really cool if it's a Nexus event or a event, whatever, in the main timeline that is being introduced or slowly being introduced because it hasn't been able to actually happen. It's actually happening, but it's not happening quickly. Like it's
Right.
materializing and whatever.
Right.
So
Well, and it could be if the timekeepers are dead, like what happens to the one true timeline
Right,
now?
right.
And like, is everything just gonna kind of meld together and the whole multiverses thing?
Right,
and
right.
So now that we've lost track of the one true timeline, is everything gonna kind of be up for grabs as to what's
I really like the idea. This is deep conspiracy theory with Marvel, but I would love the idea of them presenting something. They have presented us something, at least with WandaVision and Captain America and White Wolf. Yes, that's the name of it. And then now they're going to come back and change the edit via like George Lucas did, and changes the narrative by doing 1 or 2 small edits in a big thing, and you could still go back and maybe not change the movies because the new stuff is the new stuff and we can play with it, but not change the movies, everything up to Endgame. But you've already kind of talked about Endgame by having all the Infinity Stones in the cart.
Right.
And stuff. And so that idea of all that kind of going on it's just Deep State playing with the fans would be a lot of fun to do.
Yeah.
And then and then it all fixes after Doctor Strange.
You could conspiracy theory they're going to go back and change, like Lucas did, some of the movies or some of the movies at towards the end, and then you create this whole people now got to go out and buy the new version.
Yeah.
And the old version suddenly becomes worth a lot of freaking money.
Yeah.
And
if you're gonna go off of what comics has done in the past, continuity in comics doesn't exist. Like it's
and we start over again.
Yeah, and that was House of M, that was Civil War, that was all these big comic events.
Yeah,
bloated everything up, and then
Superman has died and come back
a couple times.
Batman, Captain America, Tony, like everybody.
Nobody really stays dead. Nobody's ever really gone. Just still alive from Star Wars.
Right, but in the timeline that they were in, sometimes they do. But they don't always just bring them back conveniently, but they just start a new story.
With the multiple timeline, multiple verse, we can get Idris Elba come back. That's all I really care about. So that is our anything else. I'm sure that we forgot some other things, but I would just like to point out that fuck Marvel for killing off Owen Wilson. That's all I'm going to say. Right?
I want to see the world that Owen Wilson ends up in and what that looks like.
Late 90s, either like Midwest, where he can go to the Great Lakes or whatever, or he lives in Miami. Like Hawaiian shirts, board shorts, flip-flops.
I see him as a surfer dude, but maybe.
But he owns a used
Sea-Doo
dealership in Miami.
Jet ski dealership.
Jet ski. That's where I'm at. That's my headcanon until proven differently.
Maybe he lives on the beach in Mexico. That would be fun.
That would be fun too. Renting out the jet skis on the beach.
The jet skis.
Yeah, you can rent for. I'm writing the comic right now. We're doing it right now. We're going to do 4 issues or whatever. So that is our thoughts and our reaction and our review and speculation for episode 4 of the Loki series called The Nexus Event. The Nexus Event?
The Nexus Event.
The Nexus Event. Not the next event. Let us know what you thought of this reaction and our comments about it in the episode in the comments down below. Please be nice. There's a requirement around here. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications. Follow us on all the social media stuff, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, you whippersnappers. And until next time, cult members, if we don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and hashtag justice for Mobius.